Let's get to the Trump news, though, Ryan, because the Colorado Supreme Court, this is from the Associated Press, they declared former President Donald Trump ineligible for the White House under the U.S. Constitution's insurrection clause, so that's part of the 14th Amendment, and removed him from the presidential primary ballot. The AP continues to say that sets up a likely showdown in the nation's highest court to decide whether the front runner for the GOP nomination can remain in the race. It is from Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's a post-Civil War insurrection clause. That's what it sounds like, basically. And they write, a majority of the court holds that Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And that was a 4-3 decision. It's about his role, obviously, on January 6th. Now, Trump, interestingly enough, Ryan, has not been charged with insurrection. Jack Smith could have charged Donald Trump with insurrection. He hasn't actually been charged with insurrection. But in the 14th Amendment, you can also be disqualified for aiding or giving comfort to anybody who's partaking in an insurrection. Again, though, it's a strange circumstance for sure. And 4-3 in Colorado.
Right, because in the Civil War, it was very clear if you participated in a rebellion or an insurrection.
Yeah, like no mystery.
You wore a uniform. You fought the Union, and the 14th Amendment had a provision that said that if 2/3 of Congress, undid your disqualification, then you could come back into office, and that's how many. Right. That's how so many Confederates were allowed back into Washington. Is that like, all right, fine, come on back. We'll let you back in. So yeah, my take on this is that, for one, liberals just keep looking for a manager. Mm-hmm. Like they want somebody that they can call that's going to fix this situation.
That's so good.
Like in 2016, after he got elected, at first it was the faithless electors. They were gonna find these members of the Electoral College who they could persuade to just change their votes, and because of Russia or because of whatever else, and they would elect Hillary Clinton that way. Afterwards there was, Bob Mueller was the manager that they were going to call in on this one. Now, to me, if you want to use raw political power, you use it. Like January 6th, that night, after Pence certifies, you impeach Trump. You get him out in a week. And then President Pence, at that point, launches a DOJ investigation of him, locks him up. And then President Biden pursues the prosecution. Like, you want to use political power, like, use it.
Don't half-ass it.
Don't half-ass it. Don't do this. Well, first they go after him over a paperwork thing with a payoff to Stormy Daniels. Then there's the classified documents thing. And then eventually this like Elliot Ness wannabe comes in with his big case that doesn't even bring insurrection.
Right.
Like, bring insurrection, lock the guy up, and then disqualify him. Like, that's your option. Or you beat him at the ballot box. Like, I think this middle ground where they're kind of letting him hang out for 4 years, roaming the streets of Coral Gables or Palm Beach or wherever he is, and then with him 10 points up in the polls, saying they're going to disqualify him, I think is kind of ugly. Like, just beat him one way or the other, but not like this. See,
that's interesting, because Trump supporters are already drawing parallels with banana republics, third world countries. They're using the term election interference. And I think, actually, to your point, Ryan, there's something about this that gives them some real ammunition when they're making those arguments, because, again, this is all happening in the shadow of Donald Trump running against Hillary Clinton, James Comey deciding not to go after Hillary Clinton. And I'm with you that, and Crystal and I have talked about this before too, like, lock them all up. But if you're not locking them all up, then definitely don't lock one up, because that is going to foment another January 6th. I mean, that's exactly what led to January 6th. And that's not to say Donald Trump was blameless in any of that. Of course, we don't think that. This is a quote in the AP article from a Notre Dame law professor. He says, "I think it may embolden other state courts or secretaries to act now that the bandage has been ripped off. This is a major threat to Trump's candidacy." And it is, and you can tell that by some of the reactions from Trump world, because there are dozens of these cases in different courts that have been brought by mostly left of center legal groups that are kind of testing this 14th Amendment case out to see what they can do. And interesting way, these cases have actually been pushed off in certain areas, certain places where they're being tried, is that it doesn't mention presidents. It mentions elected officials can be taken off the ballot for engaging in insurrection.
But it does say, like, if you're a civil officer election, like, it's included within. But yeah, I mean, you could make an argument.
And they have successfully in different cases. I mean, that's part of the problem with this.
I think it didn't contemplate, the statute didn't contemplate that the president would lead the insurrection, because the president is the head of the government that's being insurrected against. So it's the only time that somebody could do that would be during the lame duck session.
So it's a question of whether you're included as a, quote, officer of the United States. And that's the language.
Kind of is, right?
Well, you'd think, right. But then you're getting into the legalese over how it's been interpreted in the past, and if that's what is hinging on whether or not Donald Trump is in the ballot and how many states. To your point, it's like whole asset, the whole half-assing where we're having legalese over whether or not this man who's leading the presidential race is allowed to be in the ballot. Now, he lost Colorado by double digits, by the way, so it's not Colorado that's the important question here.
It used to be a swing state. It's funny how.
Yeah, no Republicans won since 2004. But so all that is to say, this is going to likely inform how other people approach these cases going forward. And the Supreme Court is set to rule on this. So this ruling is immediately being reviewed by the Supreme Court. I believe it's actually not even technically valid, that it's not enacted until the Supreme Court reviews it.
They're leaving him on the ballot until the Supreme Court weighs in, basically.
Right, on the last possible day, right? It's like January 5th. They have to print their ballots on January 5th, so the Supreme Court has to weigh in by January 4th.
Right. Although if they do weigh in and they say they're going to give an answer, the Colorado Supreme Court says that they'll stay it until the Supreme Court makes an answer. Let's get Donald Trump's response to this.
It's no wonder crooked Joe Biden and the far-left lunatics are desperate to stop us by any means necessary. They are willing to violate the U.S. Constitution at levels never seen before in order to win this election. Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. It's a threat. They're weaponizing law enforcement for high-level election interference because we're beating them so badly in the polls.
I mean, the point on, like, undermining democracy and a threat to democracy is a reasonable one. We're going to talk later about the situation in Pakistan. I'm in the press room at the State Department, and, you know, I want to hammer Matt Miller, the State Department spokesperson, about the fact that the U.S. is claiming that they want free and fair elections in Pakistan, yet the leading opposition leader, former prime minister, most popular politician in the country, is in jail and being prosecuted by the military-backed government. It's much harder to make that land for liberals when they're like, yeah, so.
The U.S.-backed military-backed government.
Right. They're like, yeah, so yeah, we're doing that with Trump.
Right.
And we're a democracy, so therefore, that's fine. And so around the world, you're just going to have people being like, all right, well, we already felt like we had a green light. Now we've got a raging green light to just like lock up whoever we want. Yeah. And be like, no, it's like, hey, nobody's above the law.
And if this is truly a domino that falls, then it does feel really like it is a third world country thing. And I mean, our Supreme Court right now, there's questions as to whether Clarence Thomas is going to have to recuse himself, because obviously Ginny Thomas was involved in the protests and helping organize the protests, not the riot. Obviously, the protest turned into a riot on January 6th, but that's a huge question going forward. The Supreme Court is, I mean, I think we all know where the Supreme Court's going to land based on
they're going to let him on the ballot,
the Supreme Court. Yes, I would imagine. That said, let's hear also, though, this clip from Laura Ingram's show last night, which is actually really interesting as it pertains to this case and how it'll affect the future going forward.
Seeing what happened in Colorado tonight, Laura, makes me think, except we believe in democracy in Texas, maybe we should take Joe Biden off the ballot in Texas for allowing 8 million people to cross the border since he's been president. Disrupting our state.
So that's Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick. And Ryan, the question of whether this is a domino that starts falling, that is going to be, we've seen this, like we've seen this, how Republicans retaliated in the House of Representatives after Nancy Pelosi didn't let them pick who would sit on the January 6th committee. We've seen how Republicans have acted and said we need to now fight fire with fire. That's the sort of tactical approach going forward. And if you don't do that, then you're not on our team anymore, basically. That's fighting fire with fire.
And speaking of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was not on a single ballot in the South. So when you are so far apart that you're not even willing to put your kind of opponents on the ballot, you've gotten to a place that's going to get violent. And that's what I mean by sorting things out democratically rather than using raw force.
Yeah.
Because there are two ways that you can, solve political disagreements, through politics or through war.
Yeah.
And so if you can't do it through politics, you're gonna end up getting war. But like I said, there is an exception. You pull a coup and you fail, everybody understands that is a threat to democracy. You get locked up, but you have to do it right away.
You have to lock up right away. You're saying.
Yeah, you just cannot let him sit there for 4 years, and then Merrick Garland, not wanting to do it, and then eventually appointing a special counsel who then moves on it.
Who then moves on it while delaying a Hunter Biden case. I mean, it's just such a disaster for the Biden administration.
If it's that serious of a threat, you got to move on it. So it was a 4-3 ruling in the Colorado Supreme Court. Somebody flagged a really interesting point that all of the Ivy League appointees, they're all Democrats, but all of the Ivy League appointees voted to disqualify Trump, and all the Denver Law School appointees voted to allow him on
the realignment
ballot. Yeah, so make of that what you will.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.